Hey everyone, this is Lauryn Brunswick, your host of the She Slays the Day podcast, and I just feel obligated to tell you that it is, what is today? April 2nd that I'm recording this. This episode wasn't recorded today, I'm just doing the intro for it, but the episode was recorded last Friday, so it's a funny world to be in Podcastville because I had all of this beautiful content ready to roll out in March, and then this stuff happened, and it just really doesn't seem relevant to talk about anything other than helping you just stay sane during this time. So, and you have to record everything changes so quickly. So I can't record 4 podcasts this week for the next month because who the H knows what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. So it's keeping me on my toes. That's for sure. So today's episode is, so it's something that I turn to and talk to a lot on the show. You guys, if you've listened to more than one episode, you know that I identify as an Enneagram 3. And I've gotten into a lot of conversations with people who don't know the Enneagram or understand why it can be important or helpful. But what I'll say is when everything started to go haywire with COVID-19, I knew I wanted to get someone who really understands the Enneagram on and to just talk about how each type of person is going to be handling this chaos. So I can know how to love and support all of the people in my life, and just so I can better understand my behavior. I find that when I am stressed, awareness is the first step, obviously, of going okay, you just snapped at your husband because you're stressed. But for me personally, I find a lot of understanding and processing that happens in that next step of going, now here's why you're stressed. And it's not because COVID-19 is tearing up your world. It's no, you're stressed because of this very specific thing. And when I understand that, then I understand myself and my behavior more, and I am able to fulfill my needs in a different way that's a little healthier. So it's going to be good. It's going to be really, really good. If you haven't listened, if you're brand new to the Enneagram, you can still get a ton of information out of this episode. If you want, you could go back and listen to episode 24 of the She Slays the Day podcast. That's kind of more of an intro into the Enneagram. I think you'll be fine listening to this one. And then at the end, if you're kind of I need more, then go listen. So on episode 24, I had Ashton Whitmoyer-Ober on, and it was a great conversation, just breaking down what does wings mean, what are you talking about going to stress, and it was a really good just overlay general introduction to the Enneagram. But this one is going to be much more specific. I have Steph Barron Hall on today to talk about how each person is processing all of this stress and what their underlying fear is and how that's going to be kind of displayed in their behavior. And more importantly, I think how you can self-soothe, but care for other people around you. Curb and I were going for a walk last night and to get ice cream because I'm emotionally coping with food. But I said to him, I was talking to him about a really close friend of mine, one of my best friends, who's very much struggling emotionally. And I was talking to him and we were oh my gosh, that sucks so much. And then I was yeah, I really need to call and check on my sister-in-law and just see, because, I know she had to shut down her business a couple weeks ago and see how she's handling things. Oh, and I should really reach out to so-and-so, and I should send a card to so-and-so to let them know I see the work. And I said, it's just, this is really highlighting for me as a leader, just again, not just because I have employees, me as I've said this in previous podcasts, I am blessed by God to be a woman who has financial security and family stability. I have an amazing family support system. And I live in America where I have rights and a place to have a voice. So it is my responsibility to help lead people and help them lead others. And so like, whether or not you're an employer, like right now, you have a responsibility, if you feel so compelled to help lead. And what that looks like is loving on all the people around you, because people are not okay right now. And each one of us is like not okay in our own way. Like many of my friends are not in a situation where their business is going to be shut down, like permanently, but many of them, their business is shut down and they are having to make some financial decisions. And currently, knock on wood, everybody is okay in that they're not in the hospital, but like emotionally, people are not okay. And so what I like about this topic of the Enneagram is you're going to listen to Steph Barron Hall talk about each of the personality types and what kind of how they're coping. And you may not know what your mom's Enneagram type is, but you might be able to figure it out from her description. And then we end each one as we go through the 9 of like how to love that person. Because it's kind of like whether if you're familiar with like the 5 love languages or with this, but like not everybody wants you to call them every single day and be like, how are you? And just be a sounding board. Like some people are going to start screening your calls for real if you do that. And not everyone, like some people just honestly want to be left alone. And some people want you to offer to drop off groceries or, you know, like I know for me, currently one of the ways that my family and friends are like supporting me is by showing up to my clinic to get adjusted. I don't know what it is about my personality and my love language or whatever, but like one of the many ways that, but like it shows to me so many things. It shows like they trust that I'm creating a safe atmosphere. That's really important. Like they know that I'm being responsible and they're like putting their health in my hands during a time and like handing it over, being like, I'm not supposed to be out, but I showed up to get an adjustment. And like the amount of trust that it puts around like me, like it almost makes me want to cry. Almost, I'm not a crier. And then second, it also shows me how much I'm trying to think of a different word besides believe in chiropractic, understand. That's a better word, chiropractic. And how like they're showing up because they're like, okay, I trust that you're going to make this safe, but like they wouldn't show up if I was just cooking brownies. Like they're like, yeah, okay, I do trust your brownies are safe, but like I'm not going to risk things for that. But like they're showing up because they're like, you've taught me that this adjustment is important. And so I don't know how I got off on this tangent. That was weird. But anyway, so like it just shows you how you can really love all of the different people in your life because people are not super okay right now. Okay, we've taken a couple weeks off doing a listener highlight, and I think it's important. I'm going to do it because another thing besides my chiropractic clinic is you guys have shown up, listeners have shown up in support of our most recent episodes and have just been very, very vocal online about like listening to the podcast. Like I love seeing your screenshots that you're listening to the podcast while you're quarantining. Like I just love all of you so much because seeing everybody else, or not everybody else, but so many people's lives slowing down a bit. It's interesting to be like working and still have a podcast. And it's like my life hasn't slowed down. And so it can be one of those things where it's very easy to be like, oh my gosh, this thing that I'm not getting paid to do, like, should this just take a back seat so I can make sure we're prioritizing? And your messages of like, thank you so much. This is keeping me going. Like this episode was amazing. It was great to hear from so-and-so. Like it is very valuable. So I just want to make sure that since it's valuable to me, I'm doing a listener shout out. Okay, so this one was actually written on March 20th. It's from Dr. Courtney M. And it's titled, Yes, 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 Girl, Yes. 5 stars. But just in case you're wondering, all the yeses she chose an interesting grammatic. Like, I'm not here to judge or anything, but all the yeses are spelled correctly. Instead of one long yes girl with an A. So like, I feel like I understand Dr. Courtney in her like grammatical choices just from this. So it's wonderful. Okay. I have searched all over for an uplifting chiropractic podcast. And finally, the search is over. You're adorable, witty, say what I'm thinking. And at just 2 years into practice, I have been ignited like never before by you. You bring brightness to my morning routine as I laugh, cry, and contemplate life. So thank you so much. That is just so great. Thanks, Dr. Courtney. I don't know if you have any She Slays stickers, but send me a DM if you hear this. My love note back to you. And I will hook you up with some stickers. Just send me your address. Okay. So let's talk about the amazing person that I have on the clinic today. No, on the podcast today. So this is Steph Barron Hall. She's a writer, speaker, and certified Enneagram coach. And she's based in Northern California. I'm pretty sure Kirby edited this part out, but she's in Sacramento. And so we had a conversation all about, because I'm actually a California girl. I don't know if I get to call myself a California girl, but I was born in California, lived there for multiple years, and went back and would spend like a lot of my summer there for multiple years to visit my dad. So she's in Sacramento, and I'm like, oh, I've been to Sacramento a ton. Anyways, I digress. She founded 9 Types Co. in 2017, and it has grown to be an online community over 160,000 followers who are all learning about the Enneagram, themselves, and their relationships together. Steph specializes in bringing clarity to complex concepts and communicating the Enneagram in a way that is relatable and concise so that it can be transformative and accessible to all. So I love that and I talk about this, is kind of one of my first questions. I love this last part of her bio where she says she communicates it in a way that's relatable and concise, because I can't tell you how many conversations I have gotten into with people where they're like, oh, I don't know my Enneagram. And I'm just like, oh my God, you have to know your Enneagram. Like, it's everything. And they're like, why? And then I go like on this weird long thing trying to explain it. And then like 20 minutes later, they're just like, so it's like a personality test. And I'm like, oh my God, no, it's more than that. So anyways, she does such a good job. Go follow her on Instagram. I'm pretty sure at the end of the conversation, Yep, I'm pretty sure we were still recording at that point. She's talking about a new thing that is coming out for not hiring, but like being a leader and like how you lead a team and understanding their Enneagram. So I'm just super excited about that. And that should be live now. So before we jump into our conversation, let's calm down for a sec. And you're like, I'm calm, Lauryn. You don't tell me to calm down. You calm down. I go, that's why I pray, so I can calm down, people. It's not, let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this medium, for people to connect with me and for me to connect with those. Thank you for podcasting, which is quarantine proof. Thank you for the good that I am seeing come out on a big level, as industries switch from, making one thing to making medical equipment, on a smaller level, as I see businesses that are deemed essential and still having an income, keep employees and figure out how they can reach out and help the businesses that were closed in their communities. Things like the heart campaign that is showing up, where neighbors are showing that, like, just the love, the things that are happening in nursing homes. Like, there is beauty all around us. There's also so much fear around us right now. And I feel like every day that I actually slow my roll for a second and prioritize spending time with you, you have this way, like, it's so strange. The Bible it's strange. You're like, yeah, Lauryn, it's strange. I created it that way. The Bible, it's like there's so many verses in it that it's like it was written for what we are going through right now. thank you for its relevance. Something that is so old and is like so comforting. I promise to try and spend more time with you. I know that you're just spend time with me. Just spend some time with me. I don't want you to be afraid. Just spend time with me. So I promise to make that a priority. Be with everybody listening. Show them the love and beauty that is happening around them. Make them feel safe. Make them know that it's okay to not know what next week is going to be like. This is the new normal, is that like we have to be uprooted from all of our comforts. And like, I don't know if you're behind this COVID-19 thing or not. I don't know, but I do know that you have the power to make beautiful things come and like just absolute transformations in people come out of this. So in your name we pray, amen. All right, peeps, without further ado, here is an awesome Enneagram conversation with Steph Barron Hall. Okay, so Steph Barron Hall, thank you so much for during this crazy time where, you know, you have a virtual life. I'm sure you're getting a lot of requests and things like that. So I appreciate you giving me this time.
Thanks for having me.
So, okay, the question is ridiculous. We all hate it. Who've been on podcasts, but will you please give us kind of like your background, your story, so people listening know who you are?
Yeah, of course. So, my business is called 9 Types Co. And basically at this point, it's an Instagram community of 160,000 plus people who are all interested in the Enneagram of personality and growing and communication. But how I got here is kind of fascinating. So I actually studied psychology in my undergrad because I was interested in human personality and human behavior. And then I started working in an organization that had really great professional development. And I started using the total SDI approach to human personality in the workplace. And I was so fascinated by it. And I was like, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. Mm-hmm. And so total SDI is motivation-based, similar to the Enneagram, but it's more geared toward like corporate world, et cetera. Okay. So I was then introduced to the Enneagram by my husband, actually. And
what's your husband do?
He is in marketing.
Okay.
He's a marketing designer. Yeah. So yeah, he introduced me to the Enneagram, and then I just got super fascinated, of course, because I just like, take everything to the next level. And I kind of have this tendency to turn hobbies into businesses. So, I just got really interested in it. And now I have this platform where I talk about the Enneagram. I also love talking to teams and like organizations about how they can communicate better. And I'm getting my master's right now in organizational communication.
Awesome. So you do speaking?
Yes.
Do you do like coaching people on the Enneagram? And okay.
Yeah. So my business first started selling coffee mugs. That's like how the whole thing got started.
The 9 Types Co. started with coffee mugs?
Yep. Yeah.
In 2017, right? I saw that in your bio.
Yeah.
So like, you're in California, because like right now the Enneagram is hot. Yeah. And even though it's this like super old thing, was it popular in California in 2017, or were you kind of like this fringe person? Like, I think this is really neat.
Yeah, it was more like that because, especially when I first started getting into it was before The Road Back to You by Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile came out. And so I think a lot of people were kind of, when I was first introduced was in 2015, and not a lot of people were really into it. Obviously people were, but not everyone. Yeah. And then, have you heard of the podcast Side Hustle School?
No.
Okay. So it's this podcast, the host's name is Chris Gillibo, and it's like, it started as just like 10 to 15 minute daily little snippets. And he would tell a story about someone who turned their side hustle into a full-time income, basically. And it was a daily thing. So he would just, talk about this. And I had a job at the time that was a lot of like data analysis and very much like visual
people
numbers. Yeah. And so I would just listen to podcasts all day. And so I listened to Side Hustle School, and somebody was talking about making coffee mugs for personality types. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should do that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going to try and get further into the episode.
Yeah.
I asked, what is your Enneagram?
What type do you think?
I think you're a 3. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
See, I am a 3, and I tend to like just gravitate towards bringing 3s on, but then I also am like, are you just projecting your 3-ness on people? So I'm like, maybe she's not a 3, but I'm like in my head going like, she's totally a 3. Yep.
Can I tell you something hilarious though?
Yes.
Almost all the podcasts I've been on, the host has been a 3.
Well, that's because you like bagged 3 in one sentence better than I've ever heard. I tend to turn my hobbies into businesses. Like,
oh yeah, it's such a thing.
Mm-hmm. Like I liked giving advice, and I really like making people listen to me. So let's see, podcasting sounds perfect.
There you go.
Okay, so you started with coffee mugs.
Yes. And then about a year later, about a year after I launched the mugs, because my background is also in merchandising. So I have like a varied background, but I did e-commerce merchandising. So I was able to really have a really successful first holiday season with the coffee mugs. But then about a year later, I was like, I don't know if this is really what I want to do with the Enneagram. And so I started teaching the Enneagram to small groups. And then people were like, so where'd you get your certification? I was like, oh, I should get a coaching certification. So then I became a certified Enneagram coach. And then I started coaching and talking about the Enneagram rather than just the mugs. Because when I talked about just the mugs, I had maybe 300 followers on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But when I started talking about the Enneagram itself, I think people were really drawn to that because it was still kind of new. Like it was at the beginning, like when Enneagram and Coffee first launched and stuff like that. So, and I started just talking about the Enneagram itself. And that was about January 2019 that I really started posting on Instagram. And it's just grown from there. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really crazy how much Instagram has influenced the popularity of Enneagram. But I think people just see it, and it's so different than any other personality test, like where it's like, oh, wow, this gets me better than like, how does this get me so much? How does this meme characterize my soul in a flash?
Yeah. And I think that's so, like, that's why I'm drawn to it. And it's also why sometimes on Instagram, I get so frustrated when there's so many just like I like memes, they're funny, but then sometimes I'm like, but that's not the thing. That's not it. Mm-hmm. That can be a real challenge, but.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you're like, it's so much deeper than that. So in your bio, you used the word concise with the Enneagram, or like, in your communication and concise. Mm-hmm. And I like that. I picked that word because as like a super amateur Enneagram enthusiast, mm-hmm. I end up having these conversations where, I'm at the level where I just want to know everybody's Enneagram. And I'm just like, I can understand you better if you can just tell me like, I'm a 4. I'm like, okay, I know how to communicate with you. I know how to love you. I know how to, but a lot of people still don't know. And so then it turns into, they're like, well, what is that? I keep hearing about it. And then like 30 minutes later, somehow I'm still talking about it, but I haven't really explained it very well at all.
Yeah.
So like, what is your kind of like elevator pitch when you run into someone and they're like, what's the Enneagram?
Yeah, I basically just say the Enneagram is a system to understand yourself and others better. And it's based on 9 core motivations. So rather than another personality test that might be based on behavior, the Enneagram is about core motivation. And so there are 9 types that help you understand what makes, like, what's your why, like what makes you tick. And then it's actually really growth oriented. So it also shows you where you need to grow and helps you figure out how to get there.
Well, that's a way better job than I'm doing. You must have a certification or something. So do you get the question then kind of after that? Well, I mean, you do a really good job of explaining why. So like what, because the people will go like, well, what's the point of knowing your Enneagram?
Yeah. And I think that like, I think for me, I always go back to that growth aspect or the impact that it's had in my life, right? Like talking about that transformation. So saying like, it really helped me and my husband figure out our communication so that we can actually get along a lot better because we understand.
9?
No.
Okay. What are you married to?
He's an 8.
He's an 8. A 3 and an 8?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Nonstop thrill ride.
Bless your marriage for its eternal. Oh my gosh. I was raised by an 8. My mom's an 8.
Okay.
And so like I will get falsely, like sometimes depending on like the test, it has said like, oh, you're an 8. I'll get like false casted as like a 7 and an 8. But I'm like, no, when I read through like the road back to you, like definitely not an 8, but like,
yeah,
I could be married to one. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, it works really well for us. Cause I think the thing about a 3-8 combo is, you're so used to being told you're too intense your entire life that finally you're with someone who like, you're not too intense for each other. I mean, sometimes, yeah, still we're both too intense for the other in certain ways, but it's like you find yourself matched in that. And so that's really, really helpful, I think.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. And now I want to be married to an 8.
What type is your husband?
He's a 9.
He's a 9. Okay.
So like he has 3ness in him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like get overwhelmed by my 3ness, but you know, like this quarantine situation is really funny because like he is just like, I think you just need to take this time to rest. And I'm like, no, are you kidding me? Now is the time we need to be like moving, and I don't know what I'm moving for, but I'm like,
yeah.
So, but yeah, it is so helpful because like last week when kind of this shit was hitting the fan and we're like, oh wow, are we all going to be quarantined? What's this going to look like? Everything was just like about to set me off. Yeah. And so kind of coming back to this, like, well, what's the point? So there's that surface level, like, wow, she's really stressed, or that person is really stressed. And a lot of people who can tell like everything is just irritating them to like level 10, they go like, oh, I'm just under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
But knowing that I'm a 3, I was able to kind of go like, okay, so I want to fire all of my employees. I love them all. But like the reason that I am saying like really reactive stuff, like, let's just fire everybody. Everybody's pissing me off is because like I need action. I don't have any 3s employed for me. And so like, that is what I do under stress is like, I just need to see action. Yeah. Like, tell me like, hey, I organized this closet. Hey, I did this. And like, and nobody was giving me enough visible action. And so, you know, it was nice to be like, okay, hold on. This is why you're feeling this way is because you're stressed and you think you just need this like frantic movement and action to be taking place. Nobody else, that's their default right now. And so it was just helpful to go like, okay, I understand why. And like, you know, I was able to come down from it a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's why the Enneagram is so helpful, especially as a leader. So when I was, you know, like I mentioned, I was working at an organization that had great professional development, and I was a manager in that organization. And so I was 23 when I became a manager, didn't know the Enneagram at the time. And I literally, it was like, if you're not falling over dead at the end of the day, you haven't worked hard yet. And like, that was like totally my mind frame and like my perspective. And so now knowing the Enneagram, I'm like, oh, that's super unhealthy. Like that's unhealthy for me. And it's unhealthy to have that expectation of my people. So it's so fascinating to like learn the Enneagram and to understand like, and you're able to like take that pause and be like, okay, actually, this is how I'm feeling, but this is what I need to.
This is why I'm feeling that way. And yeah, it is a beautiful system and framework. So, okay. So during this time, it's hard with Enneagram podcasts because you kind of have to go through like all nine. But I'm okay with that. I'm here. So the main question I have is like during this time of chaos and uncertainty, what kind of fears and motivations, like, and what's that going to look like in each type?
Yeah. Yeah. So the interesting thing is there are a couple ways to look at it, because obviously the core motivation for each Enneagram type remains steady. But then what they do with it is kind of where it can be either amplified, or they might move into their stress number. So for people who aren't super familiar with the Enneagram, each of the types, one of the reasons actually it's so dynamic is that each of the types has a number that they move to, or a different type that they move to in stress, and a different type that they move to in security. So when they're feeling really good and secure and like they're healthy, they move to their security type. And then when they're feeling really stressed and pressed, they move toward their stress number. So each of the types can be stressed in their core type and can be a little bit stressed in their security or their stress type. And so I can kind of talk through like just quick points about each of those, because I think it's helpful to understand the different ways that you move through the Enneagram.
That's interesting, because if you don't know your number, you could be talking about like what a one is likely to be experiencing right now, but they may not be a one. They might be, what goes to one during stress?
Type 7.
Okay. So they may be actually a 7, but they're going like, oh my gosh, that's so me. I must be a 1. Yeah. And then they're going to go out in the rest of the world and be like, I don't feel like a 1 fits me very well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And actually that's one of the interesting things is I've heard it taught that for people who've experienced a lot of trauma, they actually they look like they're their stress type. And then once they start to get healthier, they realize, oh, I'm actually this type. I was living in stress.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk through them.
Yeah. So type 1. So when ones are in their core type and they're feeling stressed as a 1, they go around and start perfecting everything. So they are going to make everything sparkling clean or super perfect. I mean, I'm sure you've seen those, the schedules being passed around for like the moms and homeschooling their kids.
Those are the ones.
Yeah. And I mean, any type could create a schedule and try to abide by it for different reasons, but ones are the ones that are like, no, I'm going to perfect this. I'm going to make it absolutely the best it can possibly be. And they work tirelessly to do that. And then when
one
they're
of my
really
best friends is a 1, and it is, I like literally sent her a card, which is not something I normally do, because I'm just like, she coaches a bunch of chiropractic women, and I'm just like, I can see through the internet that you are working your ass off to just like support and produce. And I'm just like, whoa, like girlfriend, good job.
Well, yeah. And if you're saying that, it's like, okay.
Yeah, no kidding. Right. Exactly. If I see it.
Yeah. So then when ones are really stressed, they move toward their stress number. That's type 4. And so they actually can get really depressed and really start feeling really in touch with their deeper feelings, but can be really, really melancholic and like feel like everything is pointless. So that's the low side of 4. Or if they are under stress, but they're engaging with some health, they can also tap into that, like the healthier aspects of type 4, which means they get in touch with their deeper feelings and they're more able to engage creative problem solving.
Okay.
So I know this is a really complex way to talk through this, but like when you're talking about the Enneagram types and stress, it's just like so necessary to kind of go through all of it.
Yep. This is not an amateur level in like episode. It's okay.
Yeah. Hopefully you have like another one that's like an intro or something.
Yep.
So type 2s, when they get stressed in their own type, they do everything they possibly can to help everyone else. Like they just exhaust themselves trying to be everything to everyone because they're feeling really frenzied about helping others. But at the same time, they have like this growing resentment that nobody's helping them.
Mm-hmm. How does that look like, especially during, like, you know, so many of the listeners are healthcare providers.
Yeah. Like,
how is that during this time going to like really specifically look?
Yeah.
Are they...
So maybe like they, you know, have set hours that their clinic is normally open, but then they're like, oh, if you want to come in anytime, I'll literally be there.
Okay.
To the point where they're exhausting themselves, trying to be everything that everyone needs them to be.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then when they're stressed, they can tap into some healthy type 8 characteristics, which is having a little bit more self-confidence, setting some really healthy boundaries. And that's really good for them. And then also, type 8s typically are able to see how they specifically need help themselves and how they can help themselves, because 8s are pretty self-reliant. So 2s can be more focused on self-care when they tap into the healthy side of 8. And then they can also...
Do 2s need to be taken care of? Like, if I had a friend who I thought was a 2, would I'd be like, hey, can I bring you a cup of coffee? Or they care about that? Or
yeah. So 2s, I think, if you offer to bring a 2 a cup of coffee, they'll say no.
And then they'll say, but I'll bring you a cup of coffee.
Right. Right. But they actually want that, but they don't ever feel like they've done enough to deserve it a lot of the time. And so they feel like they have to help you, you can't help them, if that makes sense.
Yep. Got it.
But they actually do crave that affirmation and being seen for who they are and not for what they do for people. So it's always really affirming for it too. If you reach out first, instead of reacting to them, reach out first to them and say, hey, how are you? I'm going to stop by and bring you a cup of coffee, or from a social distance, whatever.
Set it on your porch. So.
Yeah.
How do you love a 1 during this time? How do you
love a 1? I'd say when they're feeling really frenzied and crazy and trying to perfect everything, to an extent, it can be saying, okay, I understand that's what you need to do. That's important for you. And to an extent, you could also say let me take on these 3 tasks for you, take them off your plate. And
they'll let you?
Well, not necessarily, but as 1s are growing and they're healthy, they'll learn to delegate a little bit.
Got it.
Yeah.
So just allowing them. So kind of one of the worst things you could say to a 1 is that's good enough. Just put that out there. That's fine. That's good enough, because they really need it. They need it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think 1s do need that advice sometimes, the done is better than perfect advice.
Yes.
But also I think that there's a level of processing going on when they are cleaning. I think it's Dr. Richard Rohr, who's an Enneagram scholar, not doctor.
Richard Rohr is a common name in our household. My husband is so sad. He was going to go to his Center for Contemplation event in May, and it got canceled.
Oh, man, that's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Richard Rohr talks, he's a 1. And so I heard him say this quote one time. It was when the world's going to hell in a handbasket, you can find me scrubbing my bathroom floor. But the thing about that is sometimes they need that. They need to process in whatever way. So there needs to be a level of understanding when it's unhealthy, but there's also a level of this is the thing I can control. So I'm going to make it the best I possibly can and process through that and then move on.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So then with type 2s, when they're really stressed and they're moving to the unhealthy side of their stress type 8, they get really controlling and really demanding about their needs. And so, that could be I'm showing up for you. Why aren't you showing up for me? And really, really trying to control everything in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes so much sense. Anytime I hear an expert talking about it or I'm reading about it, I'm just reminded where I'm okay, I got a really weird text from a friend of mine who's a 2. And I'm and it was a very annoying text. As a 3, I was just oh my gosh, feelings, stop. And I was okay, that's right. She's being very 8-ish. And I'm all right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. 2s are trying to come in and cash in on all those favors.
I have supported you and loved you. This is what I need from you. Okay.
Yeah. Oh man. So type 3s, let's talk about us for a sec. So type 3s in their core type, when they're stressed, get real competitive, maybe a little cutthroat, and they kind of, they want to make sure they're still getting the attention that they need. because they thrive on that attention. So they're like making sure that people know how they're thriving in this time, or how they're like being successful, or like what they're doing. And they want people to know, when they're stressed. And then the low side of type 9. So threes move to type 9 in stress, or they look more like type 9 in stress. The low side of that is they are just like, kind of like ones, where they're just like, everything is pointless. I can't do anything. They become really apathetic and neglect everything in their life and just veg on the couch, basically.
Yep. So I could see a lot of threes that were kind of forced out of work.
Yeah.
Kind of going there last week when we weren't sure if we were going to be able to still be open.
Yeah.
I had like that kind of panic attacky type moment. And then the next day I was just like, I literally turned on Failure to Launch with Sarah Jessica Parker at 8:30 in the morning. My 7-year-old came out and kind of called me on it. She was just like, why are you watching a movie right now? Like, I'm like, I don't know, this feels right. And my husband had to be like, how about you go for a run? You have and I'm like, yes, but it was, that kind of like kicked me back into 3. And now that, I'm still working, I think I'm avoiding 9 because I'm just keeping busy with work.
Yeah.
And I'm able to just keep working.
Yeah. Totally. But also like you can tap into the high side of type 9, right? So you can tap into those healthy traits of type 9, which is instead of driving forward full speed, kind of taking a step back and thinking, okay, what's a balanced approach to this? Or how can I take a little pause first before I jump in? How can I make sure that, everyone is, kind of at peace and everyone is feeling good before I go forward? And sometimes that can be really helpful. For threes, I know in my life, I've found that to be helpful at times. And then other times I'm like, I have a big deadline and I'm going to go make cookies,
Yep.
So yeah, it's tough. Literally last night I had so much work to do and I was like, oh my gosh, you know what I have to do right now? Chocolate chip cookies. And then I was like, no, you're procrastinating.
Yep.
You're stressed.
9 out right now. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it can be a challenge, but we can.
How do you love and support a 3? If you know a 3 during this time, what's kind of showing up for them, and how do you support them?
Yeah. One, showing up for them sometimes means helping them. Like if they're really stressed about something, jumping in and saying, hey, let me come alongside you in this. 2, I actually had this really heartbreaking message on Instagram. Somebody said, I don't rest because I'm never celebrated for it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is awful. And also that shouldn't be why you do anything, but you're going to look at that in time. But I think seeing them resting and then celebrating them for doing that. And maybe giving them even a little nudge, why don't you go and your husband, go for a run. That's self-care for you, right? Or take a bath or whatever is self-care and restful.
Have you seen Frozen 2?
No.
Okay. You don't have kids?
No, I don't have kids.
Yeah. You can watch it anyways. It's really good. So I don't think this will not be a spoiler alert, I promise. But the general characters, Kristoff.
Yeah.
Well, everybody else listening it. So there's this moment. We've seen Frozen 2 probably 30 times now.
Sure.
And there's this moment towards the end where Anna, who's the redhead, not Elsa, the Snow Queen, her boyfriend basically gets her out of trouble. And the very first thing he says, he doesn't ask any questions, even though she is causing a ruckus. She's just causing some very questionable shit. And he scoops her up and he says how can I help? And I turned to my husband and I said, that is the most romantic line in this entire
Yeah.
And he's like, what? No, it's not. Which is funny, is my husband immediately had a visceral reaction of no, it's not. I have a different line. That's the most romantic line.
Yeah.
But I was just he doesn't question. He doesn't call her out. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? He's just how can I help? And I'm like, oh, That would be wonderful. I just want somebody to come and just say like,
yeah,
how can I help you?
yeah, yeah, totally. I think threes really love that. And they really need that. And I honestly, I was actually on a podcast last week when somebody was like, so, how do you end up resting? And I was like, well, the problem is a 3 planned my schedule. So it's kind of hard because even if I do want to rest, I can't because I have all of these deadlines that I have packed together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so having a little bit of help and a little bit of encouragement to let go of some things that you're maybe holding on to a little too tightly. It's really helpful.
Got it.
My husband is really good at that because he's able to see what is essential and then what is like peripheral.
Okay.
Really helpful.
He's like, cut
and
that.
Really frustrating.
But he can like stand as an 8, he can like kind of stand up to you in his confidence and be like, no, this is, yeah, we can be kind of dominating. But it's also why I think so many people around me would be shocked to hear that I want like so desperately somebody to just say like, how can I help you? Because they're like, what? You come off like you don't want help at all. And
oh yeah.
I really want to be taken care of.
Yeah. Because on the outside, 3s are like, I got this. I'm self-assured, whatever. And then underneath it's like, like frenzied. I know people listening couldn't see my face just then, but it was a look of terror.
Yep. I got it. Don't worry. This show's really just for me.
Perfect.
That's why we have to make sure we move past 3s because they're just like, yeah, we know a lot about 3s. Shut up about them.
Well, don't you think though that like, not like any type can be an entrepreneur. Any type can own their own business and run their own clinic and be a, health practitioner in whatever way. But I think there are a lot of people who venture into that are probably 3s.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of the Rachel Hollises of the world are 3s.
Yeah. Yep.
Not always, but a lot of them are because we're the performer. Like that's, kind of isn't that one of the words that's like when described of like, we need the stage, we need the,
Yeah. And it's also just like getting stuff done. And when you find your worth and your productivity, you just get really good at stuff, honestly.
We're also very humble. My husband got me a sticker for Christmas that has, it's a 3 with all the like Enneagram words on it. And I was like, oh, I love it. And I started like looking at the words because like some of them are really small and like they were just very honest about the words that they chose, like grandiose they used on there. And I'm just like, well, damn, you could have, it's a sticker. You could have just made it nice and lighthearted and kept, they didn't hold back.
I know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, why am I a 3? But that's how you found your type, honestly. When you're like, oh, I don't love it, but
I don't love it.
Yeah. Okay. 4s. So 4s, like when they're actually stressed in their core type, they're like, you know what? They vacillate actually. So 4s are really interesting. They have like this weird push and pull thing. And they actually tend to have 2 extremes at the same time. So on one extreme, when they're stressed, they're like, I'm worthless. I'm just complete garbage is what they think. And then they also have this extreme of like, I am amazing. Everyone should worship me and follow me and think I'm incredible and extraordinary and all these things. So they kind of vacillate between those 2 ideas.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's really can be challenging because for 4s, as they get healthier, they learn to find the middle ground between those concepts. But when they're really unhealthy or in average spaces of their type, they really vacillate pretty heavily between those 2. So then when they get
4s like retreat, right? Like, so they're probably doing pretty fine if they're in quarantine. Like are 4s the ones that are like doing the best in like self-isolation and quarantine?
I feel like 5s would actually be doing better because 4s, I think too, they're so focused on meaning and like they really think about concepts like humanity and like existence. And so they can really get caught up in like those strong emotional pulls that this time period has like, and I think fours like have this underlying desire. So even though they do withdraw and they don't really move towards people, they have a desire for deep connection with others. And a lot of fours don't even feel like social media or anything like that is genuine. Like they really want that really deep, meaningful togetherness feeling of like being with others. And so when you're at a distance, it can be really challenging, I think.
Yeah.
And get really like, they get really nostalgic and sentimental and everything, which can be a really healthy thing for some of us to tap into and learn a little bit of.
Yep.
So then when fours are stressed, they look a little bit more like a type 2. So the low side of type 2 is they become like really, really dependent on other people. So they expect everyone else to meet their needs, and it becomes kind of like that unhealthy 2 space of like being really demanding, needing a lot of reassurance. But they can also tap into a really healthy version of type 2 and become like more aware of others. And instead of withdrawing and retreating inside their minds, they become more aware of others, more aware of what others need, and really kind of having that sense of connection and togetherness, like I was talking about.
My friend, I have a lot of best friends apparently, but one of my real best friends is a 4. We figured this out. And she texted me on Monday this week, and she said, first, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh. And then she goes, how's Kirby doing? Kirby's my husband. Mm-hmm. And I literally said, I don't know. I forgot to ask him. So she just like laughed, and apparently then she went on to send my husband like a very nice, like just checking in on you type thing. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know. I didn't ask. Can you ask him how he's doing? Like,
oh my gosh.
I'm really concerned about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and especially you and your business and everything like that. It's just like a stressful time for business owners. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling that, but it's what it is, you know?
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, that is the interesting thing about 4s. And I think 4s are really, they can really get stuck. You know, they can get stuck in, especially working from home, if 4s are working from home, really stuck in like feeling their feelings instead of like doing their work. And when they don't have other people around them looking over their shoulder, they can really get caught up. And so I really recommend that 4s have a really good morning routine so that they can get their feelings out in the morning and process them, and then learn to like set them aside so that they can actually get their stuff done. So how to love a 4 during this time? I'd say check in on them. And then I think 4s like love snail mail. So I know that all the delivery services are overwhelmed right now, but sending them a letter or something thoughtful or meaningful would be really helpful for them.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. So 5s. So 5s are interesting because when they're stressed, they really like everything just kind of zooms in, and 5s want to be self-reliant, kind of like 7s and 8s. But when the way that 5s do it is they decrease what they need. So rather than going out in the world and getting more, they just decrease their own needs. So they also really become less concerned about others and what other people in the world might need. And they're just like really focused on their own personal security. So do they have what they need? Do they have all the toilet paper?
Are these the ones that have all the toilet paper?
I don't know. I don't know who is ordering the stupid toilet paper. I'm like, you guys, don't you have enough? Like,
yeah. And the thing is the shelves are getting restocked.
Yeah.
Yet it goes out again. Like I would have thought we'd be past this. Like, okay, like didn't all the people who buy the toilet paper, don't they have it? Or are they coming back
right.
more?
Yeah, that's the question.
We legit have 4 rolls in our house. Oh. And so like, I was like really cockily, is that the word?
I don't know.
A week and a half being like, hi, I only bought what I needed, even though, and now I'm like, shoot, we actually need toilet paper.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what I was thinking, but I moved back in July and I packed stuff into the storage unit and I put like an unopened thing, like case of toilet paper in there. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. So then March 7th, literally, I moved again, got everything out of my storage unit. And I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Past you was taking care of future you. Like, that is, oh my gosh. And while you're doing it, you're like, I don't know why I'm doing it.
Yeah. Like, I'm probably going to roll my eyes later at this, but I haven't rolled my eyes. That was really smart.
No, that is like some divine past soul, future soul stuff.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Okay. So 5. Are these the ones that can be considered like kind of stingy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So 5s can be really generous when they're feeling really good and healthy, but when they aren't, they're like, I need to save all my resources for myself. So I need to save my energy, my emotions, my time, my financial resources, etc. So they kind of bring it all in.
The best at boundaries?
To an extent. I mean, 5s and 8s both have really strong boundaries. Sometimes what doesn't work out so well for them is that their boundaries are so high that they don't actually have the type of connection that all humans need. Like they forget that they need that connection, and they actually, the boundary walls are like way too high.
Okay.
But 5s and 8s both actually are good at being like, that is yours to own. This is mine to own, which is super, super important, and something that I think all of the heart types 2, 3, and 4 need to kind of learn, like those boundaries. So it's tough.
A 5 is that a mind or a gut?
Mind. Yeah. 5, 6, and 7 are the head types.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so the interesting thing about 5s is when they're stressed, they look more like a type 7. So it's a really weird.
That is weird.
Move.
And anybody who doesn't know the Enneagram is like, why is that weird? But like, okay, so when they're stressed, what's the air quotes bad part of a 7, or what's the word you use?
7s just get really like scatterbrained when they're stressed. Like, so the unhealthy side of type 7 is they get real scatterbrained, and they don't really connect with people. They just kind of like push everyone away, and they kind of just like live in their heads fully. Mm-hmm. That's the low side of 7. Really like kind of scattered and almost like frantic about like doing more and more, gaining more information, gaining more resources, etc. They get frantic. And then the high side of type 7 though, is that they are able to see more of the possibilities and the importance of like taking what's in their head and putting it out into the world. And so they can tap into more abundance instead of scarcity mindset.
Okay.
Super, super helpful. And they're able to like kind of see that like, and this is like when they're stressed, but they're healthy, they're able to be like, oh, okay. Like it's not all about my little world. Like there is more in life than what's inside my head. So,
yeah. Okay.
So how to love a 5. 5s are tough because like they just don't want invasion of their personal space. Mm-hmm. But I think how to love them well is, one, bringing them out of that box a little bit, like helping them to get moving, go for a walk, do some breath work, something like that. But also how to love them well is to not be offended when they do need to retreat. Because I think 5s do care about other people. They're very kind, but people misunderstand their need to like process and isolate a little bit as like that they're mad or something.
Yep. Or that like, you don't, so they, like I said, like they might be very easily quarantined. Like, well, I'll see you in 6 weeks. And you're like, yep. Don't you care about me? Like, I don't understand. Yeah. How is that so easy for you to just be like, yeah, I'm just not going to see you during this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think 5s too are the ones who are getting really frustrated with how much misinformation is out there about everything and the COVID-19 and all that kind of stuff. Like they're mm-hmm. like, but they are not always the first to say something.
Okay.
Yeah. 6s, it's funny. I was talking, like, it seems like 6s would be really prepared for this. And I was talking with a friend the other day who's a 6, and she's like, I am calm, like, and ready and prepared for the most part. And then also I have like this crazy like level of anxiety because
Sixes are buying the toilet paper.
probably.
And they actually bought it like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, they become like kind of panicky when they're really stressed, because they're like, oh no, all of my worst fears are coming true. And I don't have a plan for this, even though they actually probably do have a plan because they've been prepping and preparing for this. But that's kind of why sixes look at the worst case scenario. It's not because they want to be a downer. It's because they want to be prepared. Like they
What's
want
the underlying fear and motivation of a six?
For security and safety.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Both personal and for their community.
Oh my gosh. Poor six.
Yeah.
The sixes are really not doing well.
Yeah. A lot of sixes, I think, are having a bit of a tough time. And so when they get stressed, they tap into some healthy and unhealthy characteristics of type 3. Mm-hmm. So the unhealthy type 3, right, is that they are working, doing too much. They are like a little duck that's like on the surface going across, and underneath they're like pedaling as fast as they possibly can because, or even like, it's almost like they're on a hamster wheel, you know, mm-hmm. It's just like, they're just going so like panicked.
Yep.
But then they can also take on the high side of type 3, which is having a little bit more confidence, having some, like confidence in their own preparation. And then, they stop second guessing themselves and actually like take action. So that's kind of the healthy side of the type 3.
Okay. And they go to 9 when
their security. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of interesting. The 3s, 6s, and 9s often actually end up in relationships together because they have that.
I asked if you were married to a 9 because almost every 3 that I've had on the podcast, we ended up figuring out they were married basically to a 9.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I kind of, I think it's pretty common, but I also think it can be a challenge when you are both going through your stress and security cycles and you're like chasing each other around that little triangle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was 9ing for like 10 minutes last week, my husband was 3ing and I was just like, okay, your productivity right now is really annoying me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you just 3 somewhere else?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because like,
and we literally talk like this too. Like I'm
sure. Yeah. I mean, like when we like talk about it with our spouses, it can be challenging because, you always have that confidence, right? As a 3, you always kind of have that self-assuredness and like confidence and everything. And then when you're suddenly like, oh no, I don't know what to do. Then your spouse is like, wait, what? You have all the confidence. You know what to do. Now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be really challenging. But to love a 6, I think, is to like reach out and to hear them out, like hear their what ifs, especially like if they're working and they are, still in their practice and everything. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, how do I process this? How do I think through this? And, they just like are feeling really, really stressed. To hear their what if statements, their questions, their panic, instead of saying, no, that's not going to happen. Just process it with them and hear them. Mm-hmm. And, that is really helpful for 6s.
Yep. Instead of being like making them feel bad that they need to talk about like, okay, so if the president announces this, then we would do this with the staff. But if they go this way, like, I'm just being like, then that would be the plan for that. And like, that would be that.
Just let them process and plan it. Yeah. Yep. Super helpful. So type 7s. So
the kind I wish I was.
Oh my gosh. Doesn't everyone?
Well, I've heard that. I think 3s wish they were 7s.
Yeah.
It's my theory because I've heard people be like, 9 is the one that everyone wishes they were. And I'm like, 9? No, I want to be a 7. I want to be like drinking martinis on a yacht
and not having to Instagram it.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I mean, anytime I take a test, which I don't recommend taking tests to find your type in general, but I love taking tests. So it is what it is. And not just Enneagram tests. Like I like taking tests. It's just a thing I like. But anyway, I always score highest in type 7, but I know I'm a 3, but I always score highest in type 7, but my mom was a 7. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, that would be fun. Like, they're all fun, but like, yeah. Okay. So 7s, what?
Yeah. So type 7s, when they're really stressed in their type, they really want all of their needs met immediately. Like they don't want to wait. They don't want to, worry about, what's coming, or, they don't want to think about like, oh, I can have a cupcake tomorrow. They're like, I want a cupcake right now, like or whatever the case may be. So they're really processing like, they feel panicked because they're worried that their needs aren't going to be met. So they become really impulsive about actually getting everything for themselves. And so
they might also be buying the toilet paper.
Yeah, could be. And so they feel like the amount of pain and grief and emotion that's going around right now is really hard for 7s. So they're like, oh, just keep moving. It's going to be fine. It's totally fine. Just keep moving. Like, I'll just, drink more, eat more, work out more, work more, whatever. They just do more of everything. So they don't have to feel that, because they have the same underlying anxiety that 6s and 5s do, but they just process it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so interesting. I'm so 7-ish. I also will get 7 a lot on quizzes, and my husband had to send me, because there's on the Enneagram Institute, like 3s and 7s get like falsely typecasted. And like, I read through this, just horrific. On the Enneagram Institute does not sugarcoat things at all, so I'm reading through this long article about like, they're like, 3s and 7s definitely get confused a lot. And they just started going into like some real root reasons behind things. And I'm just like, I just basically was like, no, I'm still a 3, but I just hate myself just a little bit more type thing. But yeah, a lot of that is because it's the like keeping busy. I don't want to feel. I just want to produce. I just want to like same thing.
Yeah. I mean, and you read those articles too, when it like is talking about your relationship and you're like, oh, we're doomed. We're for sure doomed. So it's so funny. But anyway, so when 7s are stressed and they like move toward type 1 as their stress type, the high side of type 1 is that they actually follow through on their plans and projects, and they are getting stuff done, because 7s can be really, really good starters and not very good finishers of projects. So the high side of type 1, they become more concerned about people and like actually make decisions more methodically. But the low side of type 1 and like the more unhealthy characteristics of type 1 is that they get really judgmental and really, really nitpicky and perfectionistic about what they're working on. Mm-hmm. And so they insist that there's only one right way to do it, and they know the right way, and they will like bulldoze everyone else.
It's so easy just to see yourself in so many different types. This is like the entry level to the Enneagram has got to be like, well, I think I'm all of them.
Yeah.
Is that where people...
Yeah. And I mean, people all the time, like I'll meet them and, tell them briefly what I do. I try not to get into it too much. They're like, okay, well, what's my type? And I'm like, oh, well, I mean,
isn't a party trick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's start with your relationship with your mother. Like,
right. I don't, right. I'm like, tell me your worst fear. And they're like, ah.
That's a good
conversation.
Yep. Oh my God.
Great. It shuts them up though. Just kidding.
What are 7's worst fear?
Of being trapped in pain or boredom.
Oh, okay.
And for a lot of 7s, boredom feels physically painful.
So they are not doing okay if they are being quarantined right now.
No. They're having a real hard time.
Check on your 7s.
Check on your 7s. Make sure they're doing okay. Send them a bottle of champagne through Drizzly or something. Like they are needing a little bit of encouragement. But maybe it's also time for 7 to have all these amazing ideas all the time, to actually start something and finish it, because they're feeling a little stressed. They're tapping into that type 1 and they're like, oh, I'm going to do this, and like actually tap into it and do it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really good. But 7s have a really hard time with being trapped in the house. Like, it is not great. So.
Yeah. And that's where like, I go like, okay, I idolize the concept that like, oh, maybe I will be forced to stop working and then maybe I'll actually rest. And I'm like, okay, I will. But like, I mean, between you and I, we know I wouldn't. I think I would. But like, I idealize the concept that like maybe somebody will force me to just sit and do nothing in my house. And
Yeah. I mean, maybe that, I mean, it hasn't happened for me yet, but you know, it could.
Just start a business.
Start a new business. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So love a 7 by planning a call with them, planning to play a game. My family, we play games on FaceTime and virtually and stuff. So, yeah, do something like that.
Okay.
Type 8s. So 8s, when they're stressed in their own type, they are really, really concerned for their own safety and self-protection and vulnerability. So 8s in general, they're motivated by protecting themselves. And so when like 8s can tend to have, when they're stressed, a really every man for themselves type of mentality. But they also have very much like they want to protect their loved ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the worst thing that could happen to an 8 is for something to happen to one of their loved ones and the 8 not be able to protect them. So they're feeling really stressed. They might also be buying the toilet paper, honestly.
So everybody's buying the toilet paper.
Everybody's buying the toilet paper for different reasons. The 3s are buying it so they can resell it on eBay.
Yep. This is a good business model.
Yeah. You might get arrested, but yeah. So 8s are really, really stressed about that vulnerability aspect of it. And they don't want to feel vulnerable to a disease, or they don't want to feel like their practice that they've built is vulnerable to being dismantled by something like this. So that's really tough. But when they go to their stress type, they move a little bit more toward type 5. So the high side of type 5 is helpful because they step back and they gain more perspective. So instead of just seeing their own tunnel vision, they are able to take a little bit of a break, take a step back, and like kind of have a wider perspective. And they're able to like kind of take some rest and to conserve some of their energy. And then the low side of type 5 is that they are really, really out of touch with their feelings and out of touch with the people around them. And they become like almost like neurotic about gaining information and like learning more about what's going on.
Watching the news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's tough. I mean, I think it is tough for 8s. Again, like kind of like 5s and 7s, I guess. It's like really hard for them to feel vulnerable. And their reaction to that sometimes can be a little bit like get a little bit hyperactive in protecting themselves. So you can love an 8 by, let's see, what do 8s need right now? I think 8s tend to take on responsibility in their households a lot. And so you can love an 8 by taking on some responsibility, kind of like what you would do for 1s. And so that they have less that they feel stressed about. Okay. So taking on something and then just reaching out and checking in and not even like being very genuine. Like 8s hate when people are like sugarcoating things, you know?
Yeah.
But being really genuine and just reaching out and saying, hey, like, how's it going? And not being too touchy-feely about it, but kind of having some connection with them.
Can you like, is it helpful to try and like force an 8 into vulnerability and being honest? Like, is there any point in breaking down the wall, or they don't need you to break down that wall? Like, they're good with the wall of vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean, you can't force an 8 to do anything. You can invite
You're not
them.
allowed to typecast children, but I have a 5-year-old who she is so 8, I can't even. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Love her dearly.
That is so funny. Yeah. I mean, you can't force them to do anything, but you can. One thing that sometimes 8s that helps 3s, 7s, and 8s tap into more vulnerability is to go first. So if somebody else says, like, shares how they're feeling, then sometimes it's kind of an invitation for 8s to kind of process that as well. Okay. But 8s are really good about choosing who they will process things with and who they won't. So if you are not in that tight circle, then the 8 will just say, oh, I'm good. I'm fine.
Yep.
But if you are in the tight circle, then you'll see a different side.
Got it.
So type 9s, finally. So type 9s, did you know that they're the most stubborn type?
I didn't know they were the most stubborn type. It makes sense. It makes sense. Why, when I read 9s, like Kirby, again, my husband, read 4 books before he learned that he was a 9.
Yeah.
Like, heard about this, took tests, like 5-way tie, and then like a 3-way tie, second place. Read Brought Back to You, read Richard Rohr's, read another one. So like, he's literally read, I think 4 or 5 different books on the Enneagram. And finally we're like, all right, you're a 9. So, but I didn't know they were stubborn.
So in my coaching services, one of the things I do is typing sessions where I sit on Zoom with someone and we process through their life and determine their type. And most of the time, like 90% of the time, they're type 9s.
That need a typing session? Yeah. Because
they have a really hard time finding their type.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because 9s really, they see every perspective. And so they can see themselves a little bit in every type. Mm-hmm. And they often aren't super tuned into like their actual, inner voice and who they really are. They're not super in tune with that a lot of the time.
So like not super self-aware to be able to take it and be like, no, this is actually what I would do type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a way to say that than saying they're not self-aware, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. But they're stubborn because like, if you tell a type 9 or like, if you ask a type 9 to do something and they don't want to do it, they're like, oh, mm-hmm. And then they don't do it. So they smile and nod, and then they just won't do it because they do not want to be controlled. They want independence. They want to be at peace and aligned with people, but they don't want anyone to be able to tell them what to do because they want their own inner peace as well.
I need to stop hiring and marrying 9s. I have out of my employees, I think I have 4 9s.
Oh my gosh.
I just surround myself with 9s. And now I'm like, those motherfuckers, that's why they don't get that.
Wait, so what other types are on your team?
I have 1.
Okay.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4 9s and 2 2s.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. I mean, they're all amazing, but I could, and I don't know if I would hire a 3 or 8. I think the competitiveness in me would see someone in an interview and be like, alpha female, we're going to clash heads type of thing. But I got a bunch of 9s and 2s. Yeah.
I mean, the hard thing about that, the good thing about that is they're really there for people. They're there for you.
In a service industry, I could see why, when I'm hiring these people to care for other people, I'm like, they're amazing at their job, that part of their job. When I'm like, we should be coming up with ideas. We should be doing stuff during this quarantine time. We should be maximizing our systems and procedures. And they're just like,
whoa,
you need to
Yeah. That could be tough, but I never recommend hiring based on Enneagram type. But if you had a type 6, that might be a really great balance for your team.
I could see that.
Because 6s are super, super, super responsible, kind of like 1s, but they're more likely to, 6s can be challenging on teams too, because they'll tell you all the things that might go wrong. And then you're like, oh no, like, and for you, it might just be like for you, the reaction might just be like, shut up and do it. Like, you know what I mean? But 6s can be really helpful because they're so responsible and detail oriented, kind of like 1s, but they bring a different energy than 1s do. So
I think I would like that too, because right now I don't have anybody who will necessarily stand up and go like, okay, how do you want us to handle if this happens though? And I actually do receive it pretty well. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up. So my 1 is typically the only one who like feels okay enough to be like, okay, love it. Yes. What about this? Well, how do you want us to handle that? And I'm like, oh, didn't think about that, because I just want to like take off running. Yeah. And then I'm like, why are you all running with me?
Yeah. You need that troubleshooting energy. Like 1s have it. 2s are real. They're all really hard workers, just in different ways. But 6s are really great for that. So anyway, back to 9s.
All right, back to 9s.
We love 9s. They, when they're really stressed though, they are using most of their energy, especially right now, to keep the peace. So they are really having this force that's like, it's like they're pushing one wall away on one side and the other wall away on the other side. So all the information, like everything that's pouring in, they're really, really trying to suppress everything so that they feel at peace. And that's tough. Because that they end up like not having any energy left for anything else. So they tap into type 6 when they're stressed. The high side of type 6 is that they're actually more outspoken and will speak up on their own behalf and like troubleshoot and kind of like more security oriented, more focused on that. So that's really helpful. And in a healthy way. So they're not going to merge, but they're going to be like, all right, what do we need to do to keep the community safe, to keep everyone functioning and healthy and doing well?
Yeah.
And the low side of type 6 is that they get really just overwhelmed by the anxiety of everything. And they just react out of gut instinct instead of like actually making a plan and like moving forward. So that's really challenging for 9s. And to love a 9 during this process, I would say, give them like a little time in the morning, especially to set up a routine and to actually like get themselves started. And so they can rely on that as like keeping their peace so that they don't have to exert all their energy later in the day to manage chaos.
So like a morning routine is going to be really essential.
Yeah.
For a 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's good. My husband has a very good routine. I'll stop giving him a hard time about like, I guess I'll just make the girls breakfast while you're meditating. Yeah. Okay, fine. I can love him. It's fine. Oh man. We made it through them.
Made it through. And it always takes a little longer than you expect, but you know,
it's deep. It's not, like I said, it's not a party trick. It's not a personality test. It's like, it's deep understanding of fears and motivations. And so, well, Steph, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah. So I am on Instagram at 9typesco, and you can find me online at 9types.co. That's my website.
Do you still sell coffee mugs?
I do. Yeah. I was like, do I? They're on Etsy.
Okay.
Because Etsy is like a really cheap way to like host them instead of paying for site or whatever. Working on like some ideas to revamp that. Like I would love to make different products, but we'll see in due time. Mm-hmm. But I also,
go ahead. I was just going to say like, I have helped because we're a very small town, and giving unsolicited business advice is this like a 3 thing too. I can't tell you how many small business owners have come in, and they're like, they just started their restaurant and they're like, I don't really know. And just like completely unsolicited, I'm like, okay. And I like sit down and I'm like, so what if you like did this and helped like 4 different businesses? I don't know if I've actually helped them, but in my brain.
Yeah.
This way.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, so that's actually one of the other things I do. So I have basically an organization that I started with another Enneagram coach, and we help coaches, like we coach coaches to get out of their own way, to learn how to actually run a business, and then build a business they love that actually makes them money. So you can also find that on my Instagram. And then I'm launching this week the Enneagram for Teams. So because I'm getting my master's in organizational communication, I have been working toward, for the last couple of years, doing my thesis on team communication in a remote work environment. And it's more relevant now than ever. So,
gosh.
Yeah. So I'm using the Enneagram to help people actually learn how to communicate better so they can actually grow as a team instead of just floundering in this weird season that they're in.
So will this be a course? Will it be okay.
It'll be a video course online. So they'll get a workbook and then they'll get videos that they can work through with their teams on a weekly basis.
And that's launching when?
Tomorrow.
Okay. So this episode is going to drop on, I believe, hold on, let me look at it, April 5th. So like this is live. So what website do people go to?
9types.co. And then at the top of the page, you can just click courses, and then you'll find that course and then other courses that I offer as well.
Awesome. I'm excited about that. I totally geek out and get that. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Steph. I really appreciate this like a ton, having never met me or owing me anything, to be willing to give me an hour and a half of your time.
Of course.
And good luck in Sacramento. Like,
thanks.
Is there like, you guys have been hit now for a couple, so like, are there less cases being diagnosed? And
there still really aren't a lot of tests, actually. Okay. So like people are like, why didn't you get tested? And I was like, well, because it just, I don't know. Like
there's not a lot of tests.
Yeah. And now they are testing people. So there probably will be a huge influx of cases and then we'll start to see it drop. But we've been quarantined since Friday. So 2 weeks ago tomorrow.
Okay. Wow.
We've been.
And when are you allowed out?
I don't know.
It was just until further notice.
Yeah. Though, to my knowledge, though, to be honest, my husband and I have both been working from home together since July. So basically nothing has changed because we just both work from home.
Got it. Yep. Okay. So, well, thank you again so much. She Slayers, go find Steph Barron Hall, the 9 Types Co. Wait, did I say that right? The 9 Types Co. Super cool, super awesome. Thank you so much. And
thanks for having me. Hopefully everyone was able to understand everything we talked about. And if not, email me, DM me.
Yeah. In the intro, I will prep, like we go deep and like we go there fast. And if you're not into the Enneagram, someday you will be, and come back and listen to this. So.
Yeah.
All right. Until next week, She Slayers, good luck out there and stay healthy.